Hello and welcome to another edition of the Door 14 Hockey Podcast. I'm your host Marty alongside Dave
Hello.
and John.
Hello.
No Aaron tonight. There's always one person missing, isn't there, this last 2 weeks? So Aaron's this week's healthy scratch. Unfortunately can't join us tonight. Or is he healthy? He's unhealthy?
He's an
Unhealthy,
unhealthy
yeah.
scratch. He's on the injured
Unhealthy.
reserve list.
Yeah, he was blaming his son today for bringing in unknown foreign bacteria into his house because of crash and stuff. So yeah, Dave.
He's not here. He's not here because he failed the infectious disease protocol for podcasting.
Except we're doing it online, so it doesn't really apply. But yeah, sure enough. Dave, how are you?
Oh, I'm all good. I'm all good.
Good, good. And John, anything strange, exciting with you?
Yeah, as it turns out, I think I am totally allowed now to reveal
Okay.
that some big news that me and my wife have, and that is that we are expecting our first little baby, and we
Yeah.
went for the scans yesterday. Everything looks good, and yeah, exciting times. Worrying, but exciting times.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, I meant to ask before coming on to this show, if it was okay to talk about it or not, and I forgot to ask. So yes, congratulations.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
massive congratulations to both you and Catherine. It's pretty exciting. You're about to join the other two in becoming a father. So exciting times, exciting
Yep.
times.
Mhm.
Starting to price up tiny jerseys.
Well, I think the tradition has to be. I think the tradition is that I have to buy the first jersey. I think because that's what I've
Yeah.
done for the other kids. So that's the tradition. So the first jersey will be on me. So we'll get that sorted before
Well,
the
I
end
mean,
of the season.
just to
So
be 100%, my kid
yeah.
wears nothing but the pro spec jerseys, so stitched and
Oh
all
right,
that.
okay,
So
right, okay. Yeah, I don't know if they do the kid sizes in the pro ones, but we'll see. We'll have a look. But yes, no, congratulations. Massive congratulations to you both.
thank you very much.
That is, Dave. You were very quiet there. You had nothing else to add to the.
No, it's just going through the usual, and I'm not. My news isn't obviously nowhere near as important as somebody else's. I'm just working away.
Good, good. That's all right. I did laugh though at the start of that. That when you first announced that, John, that you're announcing there because Dave put up we're using a new software tonight. So if there's any issues with the recording, we apologize. It's a trial
It's
run with a
all
new
it's it's all my fault.
Yeah, it's all Dave's fault. But there's a little ticker thing at the bottom, and you put up the little ticker as soon as he said that, and I couldn't help but laugh when I seen the ticker at the bottom. I was like, it's going to catch me off every single time tonight. So, but yes, hopefully, fingers crossed, everything works okay. So this is a pre-announcement to say apologies if anything breaks. Guys, if it's okay with you guys, what we'll do is we will start into our show as we normally do and take a quick look at the league standings. Currently, how things are shaping up across the league here in the UK as well as across the pond in the NHL. So we're going to start here in the UK with the Elite Ice Hockey League. I should say the Premier Sports Elite Ice Hockey League. Sitting on top with 12 games played and 18 points is the Sheffield Steelers, followed by the Cardiff Devils in second with 12 games played and 17 points. Guildford sitting third with 14 games and 17 points. Belfast are in fourth with 11 games played and 12 points. Coventry in fifth with 10 games played and 11 points. Manchester in sixth with 14 games played and 11 points. Nottingham are in seventh there with 9 games played and 10 points. And Fife are sitting in eighth with 13 games and 10 points. Glasgow then are sitting in ninth with 6 games and 7 points. Obviously, a lot less games because they've only really started their season in the last 3 weeks. And Dundee Stars sit at the bottom 10th with 13 games and 7 points. Let's get your thoughts and opinions on the standings as they currently are. Dave, we're going to start with you first. What's your thoughts? Let's look at the top of the league there, the top of the standings. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, we're starting to see some quality getting string together. A couple of good wins from the top guys there. Obviously, the Giants falling foul to the Devils at the weekend, and that you can start to see a little bit of form coming together from those top two guys. The middle of the pack, I think, is still like we were talking about last week or 2 weeks ago, that it's just anyone's game at the minute. And it could just go either way. And then we're now starting to see Fife string a couple of wins together, which has really changed their sort of outlook on the season. That for a while there, it was looking like it was going to be a dire one, and now they've stringed a few games together and they got their first away win in Nottingham. I think, am I making that up? So it makes a big difference to the confidence of the team. So they should continue. And then we're just waiting on obviously Glasgow. We know they can do it. They got their first road win as well, or am I making that up? Could be. But they we know that they can win, and then hopefully we'll see that happen. So because they're still languishing there in ninth. So.
Yeah, John. Dave touched upon it there. Middle of the pack. So we're talking, Belfast, Coventry, Manchester, kind of middle of the pack there. Obviously, as Belfast Giants fans, we've got our own opinions on what's happening there. But give me your thoughts in terms of what you're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, for us to be in the middle of the pack, I think that's exactly where I'd expect the Giants to be right now, based on the results that we've seen. We look squarely middle of the pack right now, coming off a 0-point weekend away to Cardiff. We look at the Cardiff games, and that's the test. That's where we need to be competing for points. Like, those need to be close games. And don't get me wrong, it looked like a close enough game, but problems with travel and everything that the team had aside, those are games that need to be closer than 4-2 losses, and closer in. I didn't see the game. I've seen the highlights. It didn't look like a close game. It never looked like a close game. Again, there was lots of other issues with that one, but then coming back against Dundee the next night, totally granted that we had to travel. Again, it wasn't a full home advantage, but Dundee had to travel as well, and we got schooled on our own ice. I was the only one of us who was able to make that game, and it was awful. Like, it was actually awful to watch, and you could tell the players were flat and the crowd was flat, and it was a tough 60-minute watch, if I'm honest. It was a tough 59-minute watch. The last 90 seconds were exciting because the Giants then appeared and started playing, but by then it was way too late. Elsewhere in the table,
Kiefer actually put a thing in the telly there this week, or obviously after the game, and he was saying that he would have expected a team that he coaches to take out that loss in Cardiff against the team the next night. So he would have expected the Giants to turn around against Dundee and basically stick their boots in, and he didn't get it. That's why he wasn't overly happy. He says he's not as
any coach couldn't be happy with that, because not only it was a second loss on the trot, it was a loss like that at home. Mm-hmm. That's not the sort of loss that we should be taking in the SSE arena. That's an awful loss to take. And I joked around with you because I wasn't 100% if I was going to make that game. Me and my wife were heading out to go and get the Christmas tree, of all things, and she was feeling pretty ropey with the pregnancy and everything. So I didn't take a jersey with me, thinking I was going to either go home and pick up a jersey or whatever, but we ended up leaving the tree in the car and going to the game, so I had no jersey. So I picked up it's kind of sitting behind me here, this jersey. I'm never wearing it again.
That's great for a podcast. It's not visual, but okay, yeah.
Sorry, I'm recording.
I'm never wearing it again. This thing is going to stay as a work seat warmer. That's all it's going to do from now on, until I decide to mount it. But yeah, and then elsewhere in the table, we'll talk about it later on. But it's absolutely no surprise to see the Sheffield Steelers at the top, because they seem to be chemically enhanced.
We will come back to that later on in the penalty box segment. There will be a discussion around that. Sheffield there do seem to be, obviously, I don't know. I don't know if it's, they obviously responding quite quickly to injury there as well. Like, when there's as soon as someone goes down with an injury, they suddenly have someone lined up to come in and take the spot, or they have someone. I don't know. It just seems to be so quick.
I thought the roster restrictions this year were going to stop that revolving door in Sheffield, but apparently it doesn't seem to.
No,
and
because
it's all to do with this injured reserve rule. So I know that Brendan Connolly, for example, looks like he's on long-term injured reserve, and they're just not taking him off that, because technically it doesn't count as one of their changes if he's still on the injured reserve. So I don't know, can he stay on the injured reserve the whole season?
Correct, yeah. I mean, they can. Obviously, they keep him on there the whole season, but it just means they'll have to make sure they're paying him for the whole season for being on the list.
Mm.
Whereas, I think the idea was that if someone was injured enough that they would have to be let go, or if there's an issue where the player had to leave the team for whatever reason, then that's whenever it's classified as one of those roster changes, I think. But as long as they keep him on a injury reserve, and I think they're only allowed a certain number though on the injury reserve, is my if I remember correctly, was that one of the rules as well? So they're only allowed a maximum of, was it 3 or something on the injury reserve or something like
I
that,
should
or you
hope
can
so,
take
because
someone off.
it seems at this point that they've got more in the injured reserve than they've got D-men.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy, but Sheffield are definitely in form, I suppose. As you were kind of saying, I just want to touch upon the Giants as well. I yeah, we weren't at the game on Sunday, as you mentioned, John. And I think one of the things that I've been reading, which I'm not really too surprised because I've only really seen uh, the counteract of this, I suppose, once so far this season at home, and that's again, I'm reading a lot of people's response, and again, you have to take it with a pinch of salt because I wasn't there, but you can maybe tell me, tell me, if it's different. But like a lot of people were saying that just again, it was another game where there was no bite, there was just no go, there was no like response. There was just it just seemed like a lot of players just seemed to be either stuck in the mud or just not moving quite well, or just quite slow or sluggish. Or is that right? Would that be? Is that what?
Yeah. So the team was flat. It was very flat. It was very low energy, and like all credit to them, Dundee came out and took advantage of that very early. Dundee looked to be the team with the jump. They looked to be the team most likely through the first 2 periods that were going to come out with the win. I think parts of the second period the Giants were on top, but again I think it was more down to Dundee potentially tiring more than it was the Giants actually coming through. When they got the goal to go, was it 3-1 or 3-2? Sorry, 3-2. The Giants really picked up, but no, it was just flat. Or sorry, it must have been to go 4-2. It looked flat. Or I can't even remember the score. Anyway, never mind the score.
I seen I seen
The last 90 seconds, they took a jump. The game ended 3-2. I wasn't even engaged with the game, if I'm honest.
I also seen
it was really hard to watch.
I also seen a crazy statistic from the weekend, something along the lines of was one of the highest shot counts that's ever been recorded at the Giants game in the SSE Arena, supposedly. Something like, I think I read somewhere between 90 to 100 shots on goal over the course of that game, and only that was such a small amount of those were changed over to goals. So it's a really scary thought when you think about. It's a clear indication that
I think
obviously
it was
a problem up front.
about 100. I think it was about 100 shots on goal over the weekend, over the 2 games for the
Oh right,
Giants.
okay. Oh, it's crazy though when you think about. But even that, even if it was that was statistic for over the weekend,
It's
I mean,
4 goals.
4 goals for 100 shots. That tells you all you need to know. There's obviously difficulties in
We're
that forward
making
lines.
it's not so much. It's the shot counts. Like, yeah, I would take shots on goal rather than no shots on goal, but they've got to be quality shots on goal,
Yeah,
and they're just not right now. We're making netminders like Carruth in Cardiff is a brilliant netminder, but we make him look even better by putting those low percentage shots on him. Every goalie is just gonna scoop those up, absolutely no problem. And yeah, it's tough to watch like that. And like you say, that no bounce, no energy, and that really transferred in. You had a crowd, you had multiple things riding on this game. We had lost the night before, we had Dundee at home, and this was the first time playing them since the Haas incident a few weeks ago. And Haas was only back on the ice. This was his first game back. Now, admittedly, Haas didn't look like he was coming out. He wasn't looking to come out after anyone for having taken his ban or whatever. But equally, the Giants didn't look to make Dundee answer for that hit, or make Haas in particular answer for that hit in Dundee. And they didn't look to make Dundee answer for their loss the night before in Cardiff. It's just everything put together. It's still early to say it's worrying, and all the chat that's been going on online about the coaching staff needs to be looked at and all the rest of. I mean, anyone saying that, they need to wind their neck in. I mean, Kiefer is a bloody good coach, and he's one of the best coaches in the league. The problem is on the ice right now.
Yeah, I did see that as a comment, and I kind of thought to myself, someone's having a laugh. Just wind your neck in, as a perfect Northern Irish phrase. Yeah, I just thought, I think someone needs to really be looking at themselves when they're saying something like that. I think it's just uncalled for. Guys, before we move on to our next part of the league, which is the Challenge Cup, I just wanted to kind of obviously a notable mention to Guildford Flames. They're holding themselves well there in third. I mean, great started off with a great performance so far this season. Again, no disrespect at all, but are we surprised, Dave?
Um, I want to say I am, but I'm probably not. Based on their performance they had in the cup over the last couple of years, we know they're a team with great compete, and I think it's just taken them a little bit of time to translate that to the league. But I'm really happy to see a shake-up in general. If it means okay, Nottingham's down there, Guildford's up, we're not in the top three. It would be nice if we were, but it's lovely seeing a bit of a shake-up in the league. I was looking back at photos and remembering games when we first started, and it was like the same four at the top of every game. And yes, okay, it was good because the Giants were in the mix, but it's still not like it's not good for the sport when that happens. So it's only a good thing seeing different teams rising up there.
And John, we'll take a look at we're talking about surprise standings. Nottingham sitting there in 7th place. Granted, they've only played 9 games, so the only games behind everybody else. Like between them and Sheffield, that's about 3 games of difference there. In 7th place with 10 points. Again, hard to tell because obviously there's a goal different or games played difference there. But I mean, surprising there or not surprising, or again, it's hard to tell.
I honestly, I don't know. Without having seen the Panthers play yet this season, Giants have only played them away. Haven't played them at home. That said, this week I'm actually heading to Glasgow with the wife, and she's out on Friday, which gives me an opportunity actually to go and see the Clan play the Panthers in Braehead. So nothing better than going to games in neutral because I don't really care as far as I'm concerned. They can knock 7 shades out of each other. But it gives me an opportunity to see what the Panthers are looking like this year, which will be nice, kind of knowing roughly where Glasgow are in comparison to us, knowing that sort of we're pretty much on the same level. Glasgow have been really interesting so far in the few games they've played. So to get an idea where we might be looking, we've obviously just had one blowout win against them, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think if I remember right, they answered our shutout win in Nottingham with a shutout win in Cardiff, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So we're in this any given night, anyone can win type situation, but we're starting to get a greater idea of the character of different teams. I think at this point, like you asked about Guildford, I think at one point in the weekend they were actually sitting top of the league. They're now currently sitting third, but I think that gives you an idea of the character of that team and the character of the team that Paul Dixon has put in place. And I've always got a lot of respect for that team. You look at the Challenge Cup final that they made against us, and that was a close fought thing with I think it was Jordan Smotherman ended up getting the game winning goal for us that night. Obviously has no impact on this season, but Nottingham, I couldn't care less. To be honest, I'd be quite happy if they came 10th.
You led us into a nice segue into our next topic, and that's the Challenge Cup. Obviously, the Challenge Cup, we talked on our last episode, there's still one game left to play between Sheffield and Nottingham, and that concluded this past weekend when Sheffield and Nottingham faced off in the Challenge Cup. And upon the conclusion of the Challenge Cup, then it obviously cemented the final matchups for the quarterfinals, which are to be in January, I believe. So upon the conclusion, we obviously had the Giants, Devils, Blades, Stars, Flyers, Flames, Panthers, and the Steelers moving into those quarterfinals, and the matchups look as follows. So Belfast will be taking on the Coventry Blaze. Sheffield Steelers will be taking on the Fife Flyers. Cardiff Devils will be taking on Dundee Stars, and Guildford Flames will take on the Nottingham Panthers. Dave, we'll start with you. Matchups there. Any of them? I mean, any of those you think will be a surprise? Any surprise? You think there'll be any surprise winners in any of those matchups? Any shall we say, giant killers?
I think the Giants are in with probably the toughest one in my opinion. Coventry Blaze have been mixed bag this season, but we'll be going in. I don't think we've played them yet. So we could be going in
No, I think
blind,
we have.
depending on when the matches
I think
are.
we've played them away.
Oh, have we? So it could be an interesting one. It'll be good to see how Nottingham do with having the their first leg at home. You know, normally they would be expecting to come in as the 1 to 4 seed, and they're now the 5th seed. So see if that actually makes a difference. People think it does. Obviously, it is nice to have your team playing the second leg at home because you know what you need to do. With your home advantage. So yeah, be interesting to see. And we'll see how it goes.
John, my question to you was obviously this year it looks like it was drawn differently this year. In previous seasons, they had done it. If I remember correctly, was that the seeded teams got to pick the team they wanted to play. So if you ended first, you got to pick your first. You got to pick first, second. You got to pick second and third. Blah blah blah, so on. It looks like this time around it's just been first seed plays 8th seed, second plays 7th, third will play 6th, and fourth play 5th. I think this is a better way of doing it.
Honestly, at this point, the Challenge Cup's so broken, I don't really care. Honestly, I'm too lazy to go back through Elite League press releases, but I honestly thought that was how it was still going on. So whenever the Panthers and Steelers game finished and the Elite League came straight out, I was still expecting some kind of selection. I was expecting a really janky Skype video recording with the top 4 coaches saying who. Well, not even the Marxies back. It's not really random. They get to pick.
Well, they actually pick the teams.
Yeah, because I think they got to pick the teams after the whole debacle with the whole bag thing, and they were like, "We need to do it a better way." I do remember something last year though. I remember last year's Challenge Cup draw. They had, as you say, like a really bad. Not last year, the year before. Sorry, 2000. Obviously, it wasn't one last year. 2019.
1 season ago.
1920. One season ago, anyway, whatever it was. I think it was, if I remember correctly, they obviously had Thorts on, obviously for the Giants, picking the team that obviously the Giants wanted, and it was really like, I think Thorts even said himself, like, he's asked a question, or whatever, and he just kind of looked at the camera, being like, "Of course it was going to be this. Like, why? Like, why would it be anybody different?" And it was kind of like, yeah. And I think they all kind of were at the same kind of thing about, like, it doesn't make any sense by letting, of course you're going to go with certain teams. So I think this way maybe does work out better. We'll see.
It does, but we're still in the situation that I think, if I remember rightly, our first leg is in a couple of weeks in Coventry, middle of December. Our home leg is not until a random Tuesday in January.
Yeah, January. I think it's like around about, is it that week of the what? It's like the 3rd week or something of January, I think I read.
Something like that. So it's just the Challenge Cup. I mean, yeah, I'm not even. I'm not going to go into it because I'll end up with a 3-hour podcast again because it's just stupid.
Yeah, let's not waste any more time on the Challenge Cup. Then we'll get moved on, and we'll switch across. We'll switch our focus over across the pond to the NHL. We'll start looking at that. Obviously, we were a couple of weeks into it now, so it's kind of a good time to kind of start looking at things. Obviously, we know in the NHL, it's all about the playoffs, but obviously league standings help towards that. So we'll take a look at them anyway. We'll take a breakdown of the different divisions and what things are standing at currently. So we're looking at the Eastern Division and the Eastern Conference Metropolitan Division.
You do that every podcast.
I do it every time. Sitting in the first place is Washington Capitals, 23 games played and 33 points, and Carolina are in second with 21 games played and 31 points. New York are in third with 20 games played and 29 points. Looking at the Atlantic Division, then Florida sit top there with 22 games played and 33 points, and the Toronto Maple Leafs sit in second with 23 games played and 33 points. Tampa sit in third with 21 games and 28 points. Switching across to the western side of things and looking at the Central Conference or Central Division, Minnesota sitting first with 20. Sorry, yes, that's correct. Minnesota sitting first with 22 games played and 31 points.
I mean, it's shocking, isn't it? But
yeah. I had to look there twice. St. Louis sit in second with 22 games played and 27 points, and Nashville sit in third with 22 games and 25 points. Sitting in the Pacific then Division, and Calgary sit first with 20 games played, 31 points. Edmonton are in second with 20 games played and 30 points, and Anaheim third position with 23 games played and 27 points. Dave, let's go with you. I mean, you must be a happy chappy right now. I
Some really
genuinely
good games
haven't.
too.
You can clearly see I haven't looked at the table at all since our last recording. That took me by surprise.
Yeah, they've had a strong, a good run of form there, 4 wins, and they beat Winnipeg 7-1, big thumping, and then they beat Tampa 4-1. So they've strong couple of good wins together. They've had a run of home games, hence the string of the wins together. And it's I think a lot of it falls on Hartman, one of our sort of veteran defensemen, showing a bit of leadership with Spurgeon out injured. So yeah, seems good.
Yeah. John, what about yourself? Thoughts on the NHL?
Well, just looking at the Preds alone, we've been really up and down with results. You just have to look at the last two, for example, a 6-2 loss to the Avs, followed then by a 6-0 grubbing of the Blue Jackets, including a 4-goal game for the captain, Forsberg, which is just mental. Hasn't had a 4-goal game since he was in Pee Wee. And yeah, we absolutely hammered them. So it's no surprise that we're in. I mean, it might actually be a surprise that we're in that third position in the division. But yeah, hot and cold, and I really couldn't tell you where the rest of the season is going to go for the Preds at this point.
Yeah. I mean, some surprising big names, some surprising teams in I suppose in positions that you wouldn't have imagined them being in. I know the New York Islanders are sitting there with are now currently on an 8-game losing streak, sitting in bottom place there in the Metropolitan Division. And Philadelphia, I mean Philly Flyers, we talked about them. Aaron was flying high with the Flyers last week or 2 weeks ago. Doing quite well, and they've obviously had a massive slump. Moved into a -12 differential. Have lost the last 2 games, and they're sitting currently in 7th place. I mean, bad times, bad showings, but also the likes of Boston. Boston's another name. Boston currently sitting in 5th place in the Atlantic Division. Performance wise, have been pretty poor this season so far. I mean, I'm sure they're surprised themselves sitting where they are, sitting in 5th place. And I think the other team to make note of that is quite surprising was Vancouver, the Canucks, sitting in bottom place in the Pacific Division now under Seattle. Not saying Seattle's coming good, because that's not what I'm saying here, but
Because they're not.
obviously they're not. Obviously, they've improved slightly since our last recording, because in our last recording they were sitting bottom of their Pacific Division, but that's now been taken pride of place by Vancouver. It's a bit surprising. But yeah, it's obviously still coming up towards the winter into the middle of the winter playing season here, in the middle of the winter games, and heading towards January time. We'll obviously be talking about the Olympics coming up again later in this episode. But I mean, we're going to be coming towards, obviously we're playing towards that winter break, shall we say, when we come towards the Olympic break as well. So it'll be interesting to see where we are sitting when it comes to mid-January for the NHL.
Hopefully the Islanders can keep their COVID situation under control and they can actually play some games.
I seen that today. Actually, there was a lot of teams starting to take hits with COVID today. I seen was the general manager for, where would I see it for? Was it Boston's general manager actually has been put on COVID protocol and is no longer can't take to the bench and stuff because of COVID protocols. And I think there was one of the practices this week for I think it was it St. Louis or somewhere. They one of their practice rink had to be closed again as well this week. And practice has been cut short because of COVID protocols there too. So yeah, it's starting to kind of obviously show it rear its head now at this point.
Yep.
But yeah, we'll see how things go, how things progress. Guys, what I'll do is we'll leave it at that. We'll round up our preamble, shall we say, our pre-game talk, and what we'll do is we'll get stuck straight into our period 1 of hockey. Okay, period 1 of hockey is a roundup of local coverage from across the UK. I wasn't a lot. I didn't have. There's one Mirren story to talk about, and actually, John, you've brought this story to our attention today. There wasn't a lot of stories this week for period one, so I'll pass it over to you for the story from the Scottish Ice Hockey board and also the IHUK official statement that has been released today.
Yeah, just to be clear, there is plenty to talk about in local coverage, but it's all pretty much down in the penalty box, so we'll get to that.
Well, yeah, that's true.
But meanwhile, yeah, things have taken a strange turn in Scotland. For the board of Scottish Ice Hockey have announced a couple of days ago. I think I'm right in thinking it was maybe Monday. The entire board, from Chairman David Hand all the way down, have walked away and have resigned their positions with immediate effect, effectively leaving the SIH and Scottish Ice Hockey without a governing body. They said that due to problems in the landscape of SIH with it not being able to function properly because of missed opportunities about becoming a standalone national governing body. They felt that their positions were no longer tenable, and they all took the decision, every member took the decision to walk away and leave the sport in Scotland and one little corner of Dundonald without a governing body. Couple of days later, jumped to literally about 2 hours ago, and we get a statement from Ice Hockey UK regarding ice hockey in Scotland and Northern Ireland. Again, by Northern Ireland, they mean a tiny little corner in Dundonald. And they have announced that they will be stepping in into what is a turbulent period in Scottish ice hockey and re-establish some kind of standalone Scottish governing body. They've come up with a 3-stage plan. Step 1 will be a consultation, which they hope will last approximately 8 weeks with all of the interested parties, with the goal of setting up a short-term management committee to govern the sport. Step 2 will be working with this new established committee to allow them to meet all the legal requirements that they have through Sport NI and Sport Scotland to maintain consistent ice hockey across Scotland. And step 3 will be the full transfer of governance that they're taking over because of what happened, and moving into a position where they will be the oversight, if you like, the way that they were, and handing the reins fully over to a new governing body in Scotland. So that's kind of where we are at the minute, with no. Effectively, what we've kind of got is a unified body at the minute, with Ice Hockey UK being the overarching body for England. They're now over the Scottish game. Something that a lot of people have shouted for a while is a unified body, which was voted down at the last AGM. But here we are. Dave, what's your thoughts? It obviously has a little bit of an impact on the SNL Giants here.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. We were chatting about this obviously just before the podcast, and I didn't know that the SNL Giants would have fallen under the Scottish Ice Hockey. It does make sense when you think about it because they operate in a Scottish league, but yeah, no, it'll obviously be. It's better to have something rather than nothing, and then we want to have a governing body going long term, so there can only be good things. And hopefully with a single body, we might see that as a goal going forward. I don't think it will impact our local teams, not that we have an awful lot of them, but I think they all fall under the Irish Association as a governing body. But yeah.
Yep. Marty, any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's I suppose the fact that this came in quite quickly. The fact they've moved quick to and when I mean obviously the IHUK have moved in in terms of obviously that stepping away from Scottish ice hockey, and the fact that they've put in place a recovery plan so quickly with 3 different clearly set out stages. I suppose that's a positive stance. I suppose that's a positive move. yeah, I suppose that's the only thing I'm focusing on is the fact it does seem a pretty positive thing. Obviously, there's been a number of issues, obviously that led to Scottish ice hockey to kind of decide what they decided to do. But potential, I think there's potential.
Yep, I think it's key to make the point as well that there will be no impact to the sport currently in Scotland. The games will continue. Effectively because technically Ice Hockey UK were still really the governing body for Scotland. After the AGM and the unified body was voted down, SIH were being set up to take the reins properly. While they were effectively governing the sport, they weren't the overarching national governing body for it. So Ice Hockey UK are effectively retaining a role in title and indeed that they had. But the sport will continue. The young guys and everyone else who's playing under the SIH banner will continue to play, which is a total bonus overall. That there's no risk to those games and to the players currently.
Exactly. I mean, that's the only main story we had for period one. Am I right in saying that? I don't think there was anything else I had to run in order before. Nope.
No.
So with that, we'll move on to our penalty box segment for this period, if that's okay with you guys. Obviously, there has been a number of stories. One main story that has took the attention in the penalty box, and that is obviously of a suspension to Sheffield's Anthony DeLuca, who has been suspended for testing positive for a banned substance. The Steelers obviously put out a statement. Now we have to
Sorry, I was just clearing my sinus. Sorry, I was just clearing my sinus.
Okay. We have to say we don't know what that banned substance is, but Steelers put a statement to say that as of 5:30 p.m. on Friday evening, so that was this past Friday, which would have been, someone quickly work out what date that was because I don't know what it was, 25th, 26th, something around there. The Sheffield Steelers were advised by Anthony DeLuca that he had failed an anti-doping test. Anthony has tested positive for a banned substance and is currently suspended with immediate effect. No further comment will be made by the club. Anthony DeLuca then did come out on Twitter and put out a social media statement saying, in regards to this afternoon's news, I unfortunately can't make any further comment into this matter until finalised with UKAD. Please be advised that this is not a performance-enhancing issue. I would ask to respect my privacy at this time as I'm unable to make any further comments. So clearly what he's saying is here that it is I suppose it's a recreational drug of some description that has been used and not a performance-enhancing one.
You guys saw the
obviously
tweet that someone put up, sort of retweeting that, and was like, well, good, because if it was, I'd want my money back.
I did see that, yeah.
I've seen a couple of great tweets. There was one, I don't know if you, I'll say there. There was a cracking tweet that I seen so quick. It was obviously the snowing over in England this past weekend. We didn't get hit bad here in
No
Northern
snow
Ireland,
in Sheffield.
no snow in Sheffield, and someone put
Yep.
a comment up going, yeah, because it's up someone's nose. And I just thought,
snowblower on the team.
it was just like, it was just so quick, and I was like, oh, that's yeah, fair play to you. I mean, we don't know the full details. I was looking today to see if I could get a list, a clear definition and a clear list of what substances are banned by the IIHF or anti-doping within the UK or across. I suppose it's not even just UK. I think this is probably like a international anti-doping association. And I couldn't find anything that was the definitive guidelines in terms of what is and what isn't.
Clearly, they're not following NHL rules because, as we know, after years of doing this podcast, cocaine is not a banned substance.
True. That is very true. That's very true. I don't think that's the case here in the UK. I don't think that's the case for the anti-doping thing. I think
that's very unfair on the North American players who are coming over here thinking that they can maintain their cocaine habit.
Well, if we remember correctly, a few years back, I think it was must have been about, could be 5 or 6 years ago now. I think it was coming towards the end of I want to say towards the end of the season anyway, going in towards the World Championships. If I remember correctly, one of the players that was in the Team GB, or at least a player maybe from Sheffield again at that point, they were off on holidays in Amsterdam.
Sure.
And obviously had decided to partake in some form of drug in Amsterdam at one of the cafes, and that was obviously on the banned list, and that got them taken out of. They got pulled up by Doping Association for using obviously marijuana, which is a banned substance under the Anti-Doping Association. So yeah, I don't think we'll ever fully know. I don't think we will anyway. I don't think they'll put anything like that out.
One of my favorite tweets. One of my favorite tweets was put out by Belfast's own Thomas Brownlee, and it was test the whole team.
Wow,
no
okay.
better way to have a go at the team at the top of the table than let's get them all done for
Test them all.
anti-doping.
I mean, is there any indication how long the ban is? How long he's out for?
So at the minute, I assume it's an undisclosed term. It'll be suspended indefinitely until the results of any hearing with UKAD are completed, or there's a change in the UKAD approach. So I'm assuming that we won't hear until the findings are made final. So I don't actually know. I'd have to look back the rule book, and I'm too lazy to do it. How this suspension affects the import levels for the Steelers. Now, based on injuries and bans and all the rest of it, that I would assume it doesn't, because as we found out at the start of the season, a ban to an import doesn't affect the team's ability to ice a full complement of imports. So I would assume that Sheffield can still field a full, 8,000 imports the team are allowed to ice on any given night. Whatever it was it 15 imports, 14 imports, 15 imports. So I would assume not, other than it being DeLuca who's out. I don't see there being any big impact on the Steelers.
No.
The thing I get from it is, like, he makes this, goes through all, and he goes, and he highlights that it's not a performance enhancing issue. The part of me would be a bit more, I don't want to say happy, it's maybe the wrong way to put it, but it would be like, all right, fair enough, maybe he's been doing some sort of performance, there's some sort of drug or medication that came up on it. He's obviously just openly going there, I've been smoking so much cocaine that I wanted to design a DeLorean, but yeah, it's just it beggars belief. It's just the club there. At what stage do they go? There's not even an apology there. Sorry, I should know better. Blah blah blah. But anyway.
Well, we've talked about it before that these guys are, and Sheffield, especially Sheffield, are the ones to shout about being role models, and they're the loudest ones on social media. I mean, depending on what the outcome of this is, if he has been using drugs recreationally, I would like to see something come out about, I've been a bad boy and I shouldn't do it, and stay in school, kids.
I mean, I guess yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, as you said, I think John, you had mentioned it there. I mean, we've had in the past where we've had people pleading their innocence with maybe like forms of substances within, like, I suppose legal drugs that they were taking, like medications or whatever, and that came out to say that actually no, that there was actually you're lying. That wasn't actually what the case was, and I think that was actually part of, maybe partial with that whole thing around the Amsterdam trip. Was, I think someone tried to say, oh no, it's part of a drug I'm using for my asthma or whatever, or something. It was something silly like that. But no, I guess yeah, time will tell. I don't know how long he's out for. It'd be interesting to see how that pans out, and how long that's going to be. Guys, we have one more. There's one more suspension since our last recording, and that was this is a Dobson incident rather than a anti-doping IIHF ban. This is a different one. This is obviously our own Department of Player Safety, and that was Nathaniel Halbert for the Coventry Blaze. He took a 2-game suspension for a boarding incident against Manchester Storm, and that was on the 19th of November. So that was just after our last podcast recording. He has served those 2 games now since then, and obviously he got his 2 games for boarding, and because he was a repeat offender, he was suspended then for an extra game. Any thoughts on this? Clear cut, Dave, John?
Clear boarding.
Yeah, it's clear cut. The thing that bugs me is, could Manchester not afford a new camera? Is desperate, that camera? It's they try to zoom in and it just makes it 10 times worse. They're just better showing you the full size footage, and they can't seem to slow it down. It jerks. It's like, so yeah, no, 100%. Bad hits. Should know better. Repeat offender. Bye bye.
Yep. Great. Okay. That is us for period one. That's the finish. That's the last of our penalty box mentions. Anyway, anybody got anything before we move on?
None for me.
Nope.
Great. And with that, then what we'll do is we'll get moved on. We'll get moved on to our period two of hockey.
Hello and welcome to period 2 of hockey. This is where we'll talk about hockey from everywhere else in the world, or as we've started to call it, the Evander Kane show. And he's been in the news again. And our wee trusty news ticker picked him up, which was great. So he has, I think one of us have put that on as a running order. Marty, I'll fire it over to you because you've got the actual article.
We obviously in Evander Kane watch, as we like to now call it. We obviously have the announcement that was made this week that Evander Kane had been placed on waivers by the San Jose Sharks. And as such, was well, his ban effectively, the ban that he received obviously has came to an end as of the end of November here. But as of today, it was announced that Evander has been moved down to the minors, and will be I suppose he turned up today for the minors team, but he has been placed on waivers. I mean. I think I'm right in saying that the San Jose have made, I think, the right choice here to place him onto waivers. Maybe move him on somewhere else.
As a franchise, you couldn't do anything else. Like, no harm to the guy. Like, the guy clearly has problems, either whether it's to do with COVID or whether it's to do with everything else that we've been talking about. There's no point going back through them all. What he's doing now is just continually doing more and more damage to that franchise and to the Sharks. The Sharks need to get shot of them. And they're even clearly, with the waivers that they've put him on, they are willing to pay more than half of his salary that he's got left in his contract to get rid of him. So they are going to continue to pay him half of his salary for the rest of his contract to get him in another jersey somewhere else. So that tells you how done with Evander Kane the Sharks are.
I mean, do the Sharks? I think personally, I feel it's the right move that the Sharks have done. As you say, protect the franchise, protect the don't bring an organization into disrepute is one of the big things you'd always see for any organization. Evander Kane has been nothing this season but toxic, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. Obviously, with the different things that have been going on. But is it a case of place them on waivers, send them off to somewhere else? Is it a case of it'll come back and bite them in the tail? Dave, what's your thoughts?
It'll be an interesting one. We know that he's had his issues throughout the year, but he's still if he goes on waivers, they pay half his money and he goes somewhere. Whoever get him, if they're able to manage him and keep him in line, are getting a stonking player for the price. And yeah, it could be disastrous if he goes to a big name club, because they're just going to be seeing the headlines and all that jazz. But if he goes to somewhere like Atlanta or not Atlanta, sorry, Winnipeg, or
you're thinking of the joke that somebody who has taken out a Thrashers Twitter account within seconds of the announcement we made that he was on waivers. It was the Atlanta Thrashers have claimed Evander Kane on waivers. It was absolutely brilliant.
I did see that. I think what we should note is, though, the fact that he was placed on waivers, and the stipulation for the waivers was that he needed to be claimed by another. And I suppose this is my next question for you: is the stipulation was that he needed to be claimed by another NHL team by 2 p.m. Eastern time in America this past Monday. Otherwise, he was going to be assigned to the AHL affiliate team, which is obviously the San Jose Barracudas, which is obviously what's happened, because he's turned up this morning for practice for the Barracudas, and he's turned up as part of the affiliate team. Effectively, it means that none of the other NHL teams have been. Well, that's my understanding. I don't know if anybody else's understanding is this. My understanding would be that no one on an NHL team.
Major rumor, the only major rumor that I'd heard was that Vancouver were considering a move for him, and that's because he is a Vancouver native. So they were looking at, do we bring him back as a sort of local franchise guy? Do we bring him home to fix him type thing? And they've clearly thought better of it, because I think there was a backlash online when they were thinking about bringing him up, because you look at Canada's response to COVID has been very, very strict, and they have been big on their. I mean, you look at the previous season, the Canadian bubble, if you like, of the hockey teams, that was taken very seriously. And obviously, Canadians take getting to their hockey seriously. So the idea that the Vancouver's arena could be closed because Mr. COVID arrives with his scrap of paper that says, "I have had vaccine." It clearly didn't go down well. So to be honest, I'd be quite happy if the Sharks just keep paying him half his salary, or paying his, well, clearly they're paying his entire salary, pay him out of his contract, and then just quietly let him disappear. It's a guy who I'd be quite happy. He's had a good career as a hockey player, don't get me wrong, but as a person, the last year or so, I think, has shown who Evander Kane is, and I'd be quite happy for his name just to disappear.
I'd still take a chance. 100%.
Well,
I was going to say something. I was going to say something about another elite league team and he'd fit in well, but I'm not going to say
it. Dave, do you want to move on to my next story, or
yes, you go ahead on to your next one. Okay, I'll do mine at the end.
So my next two stories may feel a bit deja vu-esque. One of them definitely will do, but the first one to talk about is more of an update. Continuing with our streak of updates, week on week. This is just an update. Obviously, we talked about this as in its initial stages in the last podcast recording, and that's of course that Fenway Sports Group, or FSG, who have also just made an agreement to purchase Liverpool Football Club in the United Kingdom, for any football fans or soccer fans if you're from America. So Fenway Sports Group have reached agreement with the Pittsburgh Penguins for the sale of the team. The announcement was made this week, where the Pittsburgh Penguins and Fenway Sports Group announced that they have come to an agreement, and the controlling interest of the team will switch to Fenway Sports Group. What should be noted, though, is that obviously one of the big concerns was around the fact that the ownership of the Pittsburgh Penguins, was very heavily steeped in tradition of hockey-minded people had been controlling it up until now. And I suppose one of the big things to say is that obviously that will still stay, in place. Two-time Stanley Cup winner and former Penguin Mario Lemieux and businessman Ron Burkle will still remain majority owners of the team and still have a part to play, but they will now be supported by FSG as a partner coming in. The finalization of that deal and what that's going to look like will be coming later in December. I think they're hoping to finalize that as soon as they get board approval from the NHL, come towards the end of December. But I think from this point of view, in terms of where we're sitting right now, it's good stages in terms of moving forward. And I suppose, I know, Dave, I'm going to come to you first. I mean, obviously, we talked about this, from a point of view of a bit of concern from fans, because of what that might mean for, their club, and maybe not being owned by a hockey obsessed owners. But I suppose this is encouraging, the fact that nothing will change when it comes to the top of the ownership of the team. I guess that's one positive coming out of it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, what they've done there is basically freed up a big chunk of capital to bring into the team, and bringing in, because they've now got, in essence, a massive company to draw stuff from. May they need anything, everything, things like lawyers or anything like that there. Instead of them having to source that themselves, now they can fall back on the FSG as a big pool, and then but they still retain that hockey ethos. at their primary core, so they're getting all the benefits without the drawbacks. They're adding that heavy business-minded elements to the team that'll make it profitable, but they're also keeping the hockey ethos. That allows them to make maybe impulsive decisions based on the team's need, not necessarily the team's financial need. So I think they probably struck the best deal possible based on what we were talking about last podcast, where we were concerned that we would lose an owner, like the Moo would go, and we'd be left with FSG as the primary owner. But this way, they've been brought in as a minority partner, which I think at this stage can only do good things.
Yeah, John, my question for you was more around the fact that obviously, as Dave said, it's a positive step in terms of obviously frees up capital and everything else. This deal is still subject to approval from the NHL Board of Governors, which is expected to come towards the end of the year. Do you see there being any anybody standing in the way of this? Do you think the NHL have any issues?
I can't see it. I can't see the Board of Governors having any problem with an input of money the way that Dave's just put quite well. It stabilizes any organization when you've got new money coming in. Not that we've seen an NHL franchise collapse for a good few years now, but a tight year with COVID probably means that the existing owners were probably quite hard up, and this injection of new cash from FSG just makes sense. The one thing that worries me is you've now got this weird, like, unholy alliance. The FSG are clearly a Boston-based business. Unholy alliance between Boston and Pittsburgh. It just sounds dirty. But they are two yellow teams. So
I suppose that's very true. I guess the one person to ask will be obviously Mark, fan of the show, Mark. He might be able to
tweet us.
Let us know. Yeah, let us know your thoughts. Is there any concerns from the fan base? Is there any concerns from? Let us know what you think.
Does that automatically make you a Red Sox fan now, Mark?
Oh, it might do. And secretly a Boston fan too. Is he Liverpool? He's a Liverpool fan, isn't he? Is he a Liverpool fan? I don't. Sorry, Mark, if you're not,
He does go. I think he does go to Liverpool games with Campbell. So
does he? No, but does he? I don't know if he does.
I can't remember. Maybe I'm just drawing two lines between 2 points that don't exist.
You probably do. You probably are. Mark, apologies if you're either not a football fan or
maybe you never know. Maybe he's just a big FSG man.
Yeah, could be.
Maybe he's behind it all.
I'm going to move on to my next story, and again, as I say, this is kind of a story of deja vu. Rightly so, because it's a story we talked about, which we thought was put to bed during the last podcast, and actually it's raised its head again. If you remember back to our last podcast, we were talking about the Winter Olympics, which are coming up fast and furious here in coming up in January, February time here. And as part of that, the whole thing was that the host nation, which is obviously China, have an ice hockey team who there was a bit of a question whether or not the ice hockey team would be allowed to ice because of poor performance and because if they weren't up to the right standard for play compared to the other teams that they were going to be facing off against. Remember that the group that they've been put into is heavy hitters, Canada, USA, all those big names are playing against them in that first stage. Now, it was put that there'd be as part of the thing was that they no matter what performance they were putting in, obviously as we've mentioned before, the Chinese men's team are also the Kunlun Red Stars for in the KHL, and obviously they've had a really bad run of performances and stuff over the last few months. But I suppose the Olympic Committee said that doesn't change anything, that the team are still willing to participate. But now we have another issue in that it's now going to be re-looked at. The International Ice Hockey Federation and the Olympic Committee will be looking at it again as part of the Beijing Winter Olympics to see whether or not China will be able to participate because of, and I quote, a review of player eligibility documents, which are now a concern. So what they're saying is that a number of China's men's team hockey players, in theory, aren't eligible to play for the team, although they are playing for the KHL Kunlun Red Stars. Actually, some of them are not viable to play because of eligibility, means that they were trained outside of China, and they are not actually Chinese descent either, which means they're talking about some players who were maybe originally trained and lived in likes of Canada, which supposedly quite a high percentage of the players actually are of Canadian descent as well. A final decision is going to be made come the next board meeting, which I believe is on the 6th of December, which is the end of this or start of next week. And a final decision will be made at that point whether or not, well, once everything has been investigated, everything will be looked at to see whether or not the eligibility documents meet the criteria of what it is. So there's still an outstanding thing here that China may not make it to the Olympics, and I'm sure Norway, who are the team who are going to be who are going to replace China, I'm sure they're waiting in the wings to see what's going to happen moving forward. So again, guys, Dave, come to you first, I suppose. I mean, this story, as we say, we talked about this last recording. We thought this was put to bed, but obviously not.
Yeah, whenever I seen you put it in, I was like, "Oh, guys, you forgot that. That's been a one you forgot to take out, and you've just left it pasted in there." And then I was reading it, going, "That's a bit random." Yeah, I seen another article that was talking about the level of Canadians in their team. But like, if that's a prerequisite for playing the Olympics, the GP is never going to get there. But no, I think that it's going to be interesting. Obviously, it's going to come down to how they got their citizenship. Were they, given it purely just to play for the team, or do they have ancestry in the country? So it'll be interesting to see. I think at this stage, the problem being is if they were able to, they could field a team, it would just be even less competitive than the Kunlun Red Stars. And as the host nation, they are eligible to field a team. Doesn't matter how bad they are. It's just if they were willing to take the bad luck for getting thumped in every game.
Yeah. John, any different thoughts on that?
No, not really. I mean, you are looking at it. It's a decision that keeps getting pushed down the road, but you say the one thing that might save them or possibly hinder them even more is you look at the current situation with COVID and international travel is getting more and more difficult. There's no guarantee. We're looking at the Chinese team here, who are currently already in China. We're hoping that we're going to have NHL players, but you've got COVID situations like we've had in Long Island with the Islanders. With international travel starting to get a problem, I wonder whether we're actually going to see those NHL players. I know the long list have gone out and training camps are scheduled, but you've got to wonder whether the NHL pulls the trigger and says NHL players can't be going to China. That could be really interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks leading up to the international break.
Yeah, Dave, that's me for my stories for this period. So I'm going to hand back to you.
Yep, awesome. So my one is actually one that John put in for me. He caught it before I seen it. Well, of course he'd have seen it. It's somebody putting a banner in the rafters, being a Preds fan and everything. So this one is that the Minnesota Wild's former captain McCoy Koivu is having his number retired on the 13th of March against the Preds, because again they love a good banner raising. But it's this is where I draw parallels, and I do it all the time between the Minnesota Wild and the Belfast Giants. Both started in the same year, within a few months. However, the Minnesota Wild will be retiring their first jersey number with Mikko Koivu, and the Giants have retired 6, if I'm right. To me, seems a bit excessive. The
seven.
We've
retired another one, but we haven't put it in the rafters yet.
19 this is still to go up. This is they're retiring Mickey Koivu's for a player who played his entire career in Minnesota from being drafted 6th overall, so not a first round pick, but probably one of the best centers the league has seen, in my opinion. And his scoring record for the Wild is second only to Marian Gaborik, who was great until he left, and then he was rubbish. But it's the probably the best decision for the Wild to do it. There was a lot of humming and hawing whenever he said he was retiring, and he was let go to free agent, and he moved to Columbus for 7 games, and there was a lot of talk that then that they weren't going to do anything, that he didn't retire with us and all that jazz, and they've finally seen the light and made the right decision, in my opinion, and made that decision to retire his number, and it couldn't happen to a more hardworking player, in my opinion. Any thoughts on? I suppose you don't really have very many because it was.
I mean, it's clearly well deserved. It's clearly well deserved, and the Wild are clearly looking at it as he is their first and foremost Mr. Franchise.
I was just about to say that. I was just about to say that the fact stands that that it's the first number they have retired. That's a big, obviously a big statement.
Technically, they're second. They retired the number for their fans, but this is their only player number, and it's a different mindset, and it shows you how much that actually means to an NHL franchise to have your number retired. That's serious numbers, record-setting numbers, and it's. I think that it's watered down a bit in the Elite League. Not to say that some people don't deserve to be up there, but there's definitely ones that should be, and we've talked about ones that I don't believe should be. But it would be nice to see that level of sort of grandeur given to it, but I know we can't always do that. But anyway, my rambling is done. I see there's a few elements in the penalty box. Who put them up, and who would like to chat about them?
I did. John? I will. Yep, I'll talk about them. I've been putting myself on mute because I don't want you being put off by the sound of running water and my father-in-law stripping out the bathroom about 8 feet behind me here. So the first one that I've thrown on there, slew footing seems to be the new black in the NHL. Everyone's doing it, and about half of them are being punished. So this one was Boston's Brad Marchand has been collared for slew footing, and he's been handed out a 3-game ban for that one. So we'll throw the piece up, and people can make their own determinations there. Obviously, last time we were talking about PK slew ban, and I think actually, to be fair, that's his jersey hanging like right there. It's also signed, thanks to the McLeans, and here's me having a go at him. But yeah, I think he's been banned, or he's been hit up for about roughly half of his slew foots this season. But yeah, it's a fairly cut and dry one from Brad Marchand. I don't think you can argue with that one.
I was going to say
it might as well be the pictures out of the textbook. Like it's whenever you're trying to describe slew footing, that definitely is it.
I was going to say, I wonder if slew footing will be the target for next year's NHL changes. They already take obviously a very big stance on, like they take a heavy stance on slew footing as it is, but I wonder if next year's NHL changes to obviously each year the NHL will choose like I suppose a new penalty each year. That seems to be the one that's causing the most. Yeah, the main target. I wonder if slew footing will be next year's or not.
Like slew footing's not something that you should have to take a hard stance on, because it's, other than potentially going at someone with your stick, or if you're Grimaldi from the time he was with Edinburgh, any item of protective equipment that you happen to be wearing at the time. Like slew footing is one of the most dangerous things that you can do. You can put a very vulnerable player in an even more vulnerable position by having them. Generally, they tend to be from behind. They fall backwards, and the first point of contact with the ice tends to be the head. Or you're looking at some sort of weird landing angle with an ankle, a leg, a knee, or something like that, and you're looking at potentially really serious injuries. So while there seems to be a lot of them this season, it shouldn't be something that they have to take a dim view of and increase the fines, the tariffs of the suspensions for it. It should already just be in players' minds. I shouldn't really be doing this, because the last thing I want is somebody coming up behind me and slew footing me. But maybe is it part of the game, because we're seeing more players not held to account for actions on the ice, because fighting is becoming I'm not saying it's disappearing from the game, but I'm saying it's becoming less a part of the game. We've seen it here in the Elite League. I think we've seen a lot less fighting, a lot less dropping of the gloves through silly actions. Like you look at the Haas hit on Boucher, and the one person who jumped in and dropped the gloves was Darcy Murphy. He's the last person who should be jumping in and dropping the gloves.
True.
But other than that, no one else was for stepping up and doing that. Is the same thing happening, but at a different level in the NHL? Like, the fights that we see are massive in the NHL, but there's undoubtedly less of them. So do players think they can get away with this more?
Maybe.
Yeah, there's a good possibility. Sure, was there not a lot of talk about that was it in Finland? About the hits getting bigger as the fighting started to phase out of the sport. Yeah, it's interesting. But I have a feeling what's happening, now I could be wrong, is that some of the players this year especially are maybe not as fit as they were prior, with the reduced number of games, and they're getting caught out. Because it's obviously it happens as there's almost about to be a breakaway, and they're just trying to think of what they can do to stop it. And it's very easy to sleuth it. You get your arm out round them, and you just hook them. And it could be that there's like players that are struggling to keep up with the pace, looking an easy out. You never know.
Could be. So anyway, we'll throw the link up to that one anyway. The second one is funny and interesting on like so many levels. I shared this stuff with you guys over the last couple of days on our WhatsApp group. So this is last weekend. Brendan Lemieux and Brady Tkachuk had a bit of a coming together. There was a bit of a scrum off the play, and it doesn't appear, it is 100% proven that Brendan Lemieux from the LA Kings tried to take not one, but two bites out of Ottawa's Brady Tkachuk. This, then, I mean, you've got Brady Tkachuk is absolutely livid on the ice. Lemieux is sent to the box, I think, for interference. Potentially was the call on the ice, or maybe roughing. Tkachuk is going absolutely mental on the ice, shouting, "He tried to bite me twice," and he's throwing his hand up in the air, and you can clearly see it on the video that that Lemieux has gone straight, and you can see him you can nearly hear him gnashing away on Tkachuk's hand. But my favorite part of this was when Brady went online and put out a statement on social media. That in itself is hilarious, that a player is coming in and giving off on Twitter about another player's actions, whether he's bitten them or not. And like, keep it to yourself. Like, you don't need to be getting on and moaning and basically trolling a guy on Twitter. But Gilbert Gottfried got his hands on this and lent his voice to it. Now, if you don't know who Gilbert Gottfried is, go onto our website now and scroll down to period 2 and look at the video, the embedded video that's on the website. You might not know his face, but you will know his voice from somewhere. After you've watched this and how hilarious it is, go and Google him and find out which of your favorite movies Gilbert Gottfried has either been in or has voiced a character, because you will know him, and it's absolutely hilarious. The end result then, today, it was just announced, the NHL's Department of Player Safety have handed Lemieux a 5-game ban for the bite. So it's come to a conclusion there, but by ways of being quite comical as it went on. Guys, any thoughts on this one? Have you seen the videos?
I mean, I've seen the video of the initial bite and the actual the incident itself, and I think he is very lucky to have only got away with a 5-game ban for this. I watched it, and actually I was pretty shocked about the fact that it happened, and the I don't know if it was made worse, obviously, because of the dramatic response, obviously, but I still think. Do you not think 5 games? Do you not think it was a bit?
It doesn't seem like a lot. It doesn't seem like a lot. I mean, 5 games. They might have said something along the lines of his mouth guard was in. There was no chance of him taking a chunk out. He couldn't have gotten through the glove or whatever. They might have said that there was mitigating circumstances. But yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, going at someone, you've got to have a bit of a screw loose to go at someone in hockey gear with your teeth. Like, it doesn't matter what the situation is. Don't bite someone.
No, you
should be taught that as a 3-year-old. Dave, have you taught your kids not to bite each other?
I have, yeah. You have to say it more than once though, which is a bit weird. I've watched that a few times now. I watched it when you sent it, and I've watched it again there. And actually, you have to be wondering what's going through his head as he goes, takes a chunk out of a fella.
It's like
you
you
know,
see him. He has Brady on the ground, and you can see it. He pins him with both hands, and his head properly goes for it.
it's desperate.
He's like a hungry dog.
I don't know. It's obviously something not quite right there. Maybe we shouldn't be looking at banning that fella. Maybe we think we should be sending him to a hospital somewhere.
I think he needs to go to a quiet padded room for 20 minutes.
Quiet padded room, yeah.
Well, anyway,
Awesome.
that's the penalty box for the international side.
Brilliant. I think we're flying through here. I think that's our last piece. Correct me if I'm wrong for period 2.
No, that's us.
That's it.
Then we'll move swiftly on to period 3 of hockey.
Period 3 of hockey then is our general Knocky news. Knocky news is where we talk about anything and everything else in the world of hockey that maybe doesn't quite fit into periods 1 or 2, but we think needs a little bit of a chat through anyway. Marty, for one of the first times ever, you have every story in Knocky News. I couldn't find anything funny, hilarious, or even dodgy enough to put into Knocky News. But I do like the look of some of these. I'm going to start with the first one. There's one that just our eyes are drawn to completely, and you've got a piece with a few good boys.
Yeah, I mean, if you obviously didn't have your eyes open enough if you didn't see these stories, because there's some cracking stories. But this is the best one. This was top story on ESPN News or ESPN Sport yesterday. And this is the 2021-2022 NHL Good Boys, as I like to call it. And this is this year, obviously, each year, or it has now become a tradition, shall we say, that NHL have take on mascot dogs who are in training for a number of different roles. Most of the dogs that they have joining their teams are dogs who are either going into some kind of service role, be that as some form of maybe like a guide dog, be that a medical alert dog, whatever that is. They are brought in as part of the very early part of their lives when they're tiny little pups. They're brought in to join the teams and become a little bit of a mascot and I suppose learn while they go along. But this year, and what I did want to put in a disclaimer is that the article was ranking the NHL's best team dogs. I want to start off at the start and say, how dare they say ranking? You cannot rank these dogs. There's not fair. But in saying that, we have a list of 10 dogs. There's photographs for each of these dogs. We will put. I suppose my question to you guys was, I wanted to get your thoughts on which dog you was drawn to quick more than anything. But I'm going to run through some of the dogs because some of them have some great names. And I wanted to run through the top 10. Or I should say, this year's not even top 10. This year's I suppose, rundown of this year's dogs and which teams have which dogs. Starting in Calgary, obviously they have Bernie in Calgary, who is Harvey the Hound, in Calgary, and Bernie is in Colorado Avalanche.
They're weird ones because technically they're not dogs.
They're mascots. Dogs? Oh right, okay,
they're
fair
mascots.
Enough. They're the actual mascots.
They're the actual mascots.
Oh yeah, they're their mascots. Sorry. Okay, so let's look at the actual dogs. I didn't read that properly. Number 9, we have Bark Andre Fleury. Obviously, Bark Andre Fleury, obviously from the Vegas Golden Knights, who is a little, looks like a little Scottish Terrier type dog. He is going to be a wee Westie. He's going to be a therapy dog affiliated with the Golden Knights. He's a Jack Russell Terrier, sorry, I should say. A lot of attitude, and it's just a great little dog. We have Monte, who is in New York Islanders, who's their pup there this year. We'll put up some of these photographs so you can see them. But yeah, again, great little dog. It's so cute looking. He's dressed there in his New York Islanders jersey. We have Flex, who's the Edmonton Oilers dog this year. She's a very good girl, we should say, not just all boys. She's a good girl, and she is going to be working with dogs with wings, whose mission is to foster, integrate, and independence for individuals with disabilities by providing them with highly trained assistance dogs. And this dog will be training as one of those. And she was signed on to the team with a paw print this week, or last week, shall we say? At the start of the season. Again, a great little dog there. In number 6th place, we have Smash, the Nashville Predators
Yo.
dog. He is. I like Smash. Smash is up there as contender for one of my favorites. I'm not gonna lie.
I want to make the point that Smash is nothing to do with being a service dog. He is just Smash. He is Lord
He's
Smash of Smashville.
Smash is amazing. I just love the fact that he's one of those dogs that has the little ear up and little ear down. I think it's
Yep.
always catches me. In the Bolts this year, they continue still with the same dog. They have in Tampa Bay there they have Bolt, who is dressed in his finest tie, blue and white tie. He's in 5th place. Barkley is St. Louis Blues dog. Again, he's an ambassador dog there. In up there, and he is again he's the reigning Stanley Pup champion. So he is currently there. We have Rick, who is the Buffalo Sabres dog for this season. In his training capacity there, he's part of Positive for Heroes program. As part of that, in number 2 we have Selly, who is the Minnesota Wilds dog. As part of theirs. Great nickname, by the way.
Who looks incredibly like a shaved version of your dog, Dave, Zeb.
Doesn't he just? Sully's is never off the Wild's Twitter. It's amazing. And he's going to be a military service dog. That's what he's being trained up to do. I don't know why they didn't say that in the article.
I know it's strange they haven't. And then the last dog that they have is obviously Biscuit, who is this year's Washington Capitals dog, and he is also a vet dog as well. He's a dog for veterans. Obviously in training there. Beautiful looking chocolate Labrador, but great. Obviously, these guys are following in the footsteps of some honourable graduates from the NHL program. We've had the likes of Captain, who we all know from the Washington Capitals last year, and we also had Ranger from the New York Rangers as well, who stands out as one of those two. But we'll throw it up. I think it's again. I just want to add it in, a bit of a cheer. Oh, we should also mention that. There is one, the Dallas Stars adopted a calf in 2019 called Mike
Mudano.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Absolutely
so
amazing.
good. So that notable mention there as well for a non-dog category. But yeah, we'll share some of those. I know who my favorite is. I know we shouldn't have favorites, but I know who my favorite boy is. And we'll get Dave and John to pick out theirs, and we'll throw those up. Moving on to my next story.
Yeah, go for it. Go for Canada. And
okay.
Their borders.
Yeah, we'll look at the Canada one. So this is it shouldn't really be a massive. I suppose it shouldn't have a massive impact on NHL players at this stage, but it's worth mentioning that this past Friday there was an announcement for a policy change in Canada by the Canadian Public Safety Minister Marco Mendocino. Great, that'll do. Perfect. Thanks, John. The border for Canada will be closing to all unvaccinated athletes in the new year. So come January, any athlete in any sport, be that NHL, NBL, NBA, MLS, anything it is, who are having to travel across the border for work conditions as part of their athletic program will not be allowed into Canada if they have not been fully vaccinated. So this is a policy change, obviously, that will that they're taken very seriously. However, Commissioner Gary Bateman has said that only 4 players on the NHL roster were unvaccinated. But now that was at the start of the season. That was the beginning of the season. They said that 99% of the players had been vaccinated. They've never really said who the 4 players are. There's been a couple of confirmations about who isn't vaccinated, but there is 2 names particularly that are still 2 individuals who have confirmed it who are still unvaccinated to this point, so they will not be able to, or will not permitted to travel to Canada as of January 15th, as per the NHL's rules. So therefore, if they are not vaccinated by that point, they will not be traveling with their teams. That is Detroit's Tyler Bertuzzi and New Jersey's Mackenzie Blackwood. So those 2 players will not be lining up for their teams if they are not vaccinated come January 15th.
My favorite part of this whole thing is, like, you put Tyler Bertuzzi and Mackenzie Blackwood to one side. Later on, the more interesting one is Montreal's Jesse Yolonen is he's obviously Canadian based, unvaccinated, but couldn't travel with the team because he wouldn't be allowed back into Canada.
Yeah, that's I did see that actually. I read that one underneath, and it was quite that's an interesting position to be in, I guess. I mean, I suppose they're doing what they're doing, and it's a country's doing what they're doing, it's going to impact. But again, hopefully, I mean, I think it's a positive sign that there's so little numbers that aren't, there's so little numbers who are unvaccinated, so it shouldn't play a massive part. But there you go. I just thought I'd
I
throw
mean,
that
it's
in because
it's
that was
been
another
coming, and
story.
it's been coming, and like I said earlier on, this is another good reason why you're not going to see Evander Kane picked up by a Canadian team. Is why would you take the risk with this change in policy coming in with Canada? From what I'm hearing now, he is vaccinated and
Yes.
he has proper evidence of being vaccinated. He's no longer whether he's an anti-vaxxer or not, he got his vaccines. But yeah, why would you take the risk of that? And why would you bring that into your organization when the country is making this decision? So yeah, fair play to Canada for being very clear about what they expect from visiting athletes.
Yep. Exactly. Indeed.
Your next one then, Marty, is a subject close to our hearts. We love a jersey, and Canada unveiled their Olympic jersey.
Well, not just Canada, but yeah, we've went a few episodes now where we haven't discussed a jersey, which is just unusual for us because it's one of our main topics of interest. But the 2022 Olympic hockey jerseys are starting to be released, and there is four. National teams have released their jerseys so far. That is Canada, Finland, the USA, and Sweden have all released their jerseys for the upcoming tournament. All Nike jerseys, we should say. Obviously, Nike is the official sponsor and provider for the Olympic jerseys this coming Olympic Games. I wanted to get your thoughts on the jerseys themselves. I mean, two jerseys particularly stand out to me, and I think they look phenomenal. One jersey I'm a bit like, yeah, whatever. And the other jersey, I'm just thinking to myself, it doesn't really look much different at all compared to the previous ones. But I wanted to get your thoughts on it. I mean, my favorite jersey by far is the Canada jersey, that maple leaf
The
on the
third
front
jersey.
right. Oh my, that black
The
jersey
all
is just, it's amazing.
nah.
It is
Marty, I
something.
would never say you were. I would never say you're wrong, but you're wrong because the Canadian third jersey, the all red and the black maple leaf, far better.
No, the black one. Oh no, black one. Dave, I mean, you can be the. Don't say the white because that'll be worse. But what's your thoughts? I mean, in terms of the three Canadian jerseys that are there, any of those three, what's your favorite one?
Personally, I like the black jersey. The reason I like the black jersey is, yes, the logo and everything is really nice. I like the attention to detail. I love the old maple leaf logo on the shoulders.
The
It's like,
ghosted shot, yeah.
yeah, they're doing something. They're making a lot of national jerseys are a bit plain, where they're going, look at this. We're showing something new, but we're also harking back to the old logos on the shoulders. And it's the fact that they're just shaking it up a bit. I think it's pretty good. I do quite like the high numbers as well, but it seems to be a standard thing with the jerseys from Nike. On the shoulders, really high up numbers rather than down on the sleeve.
I wonder, is that a broadcast thing? I wonder, are those shoulder numbers easier to read for broadcasters?
Could be. It looks, and I quite like the way it looks, and I quite like the choice of shade for the red. It makes making you're definitely knowing it's there, if you know what I mean. No, like it.
Yeah, we'll definitely tell us your thoughts on what you think is the best one. But I've got to say, I know a certain app or website that will be getting hit up at some point to purchase one of these jerseys. That's all I'll
Can I
say.
just say as well, like the other ones, are nice. The Finland jersey it's actually a really really nice Finland jersey.
It's lovely. Yeah,
The Swedish jersey, I'm guessing that's the one you're like, yeah, it's a Swedish jersey.
it's a Swedish
Like
jersey. It doesn't look
it's
any. Yeah,
it doesn't look
it's
any
the same.
different.
No,
The US jersey is so uninspiring. It's so
it's
boring.
awful. It is.
It's
So
just
that's why I was
looks
going.
like it looks like a soccer shirt or like an
I
American
was
football shirt.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. It does not look. It does. When I look at the USA jersey, it does not say nothing about it says hockey. Nothing about it says ice hockey at all. For me, that looks like, especially that dark navy one. It's on like the left hand side as you look at the image.
Yeah.
That dark navy one, that looks like a goaltend, like a goalie, like a football, like a soccer goalie, like it looks like
That's
it looks like a football jersey. It doesn't look like it
that's the
doesn't.
thing. That's the thing. I don't know what it is, and I think this might be what's putting me off is the shape of the
Yeah,
jerseys that they've put on these posts. The other ones look like hockey jerseys. They look like hockey fit jerseys. The USA ones look like soccer strips.
they're awful.
Like
I think
they just look disgusting. There's no design in them. Yeah, horrendous.
we'll that's the first 4 anyway that have been released for the upcoming Olympics. Obviously, they are fast approaching, so we will. I'm sure over the next coming episodes, I'm sure when more are dripped out, we'll get to have a look at a few more, and we'll see what the others look like come towards the start of the Olympic Games starting.
Definitely. With that then, guys, unless, or actually, no, sorry, I have one other thing, and it is jersey related in more than one way. Because this is something I haven't put in the running order, but I'm hoping that you guys will have spotted it on social media over the last week or so. New Jersey. Have you seen New Jersey's new alternate jersey? The first alternate jersey in Jersey's history.
This is the one that I messaged through to you guys in our group chat. And I when I seen it, I was kind of like, is this real? Is someone made this as like a mock-up? Is someone? But it's actually it is actually real.
The jersey,
it is, isn't it? Jersey. It's real. It's like
it's real.
Seen people. I've seen it in more detail actually today, because I watched the YouTube recording of one of Kevin Smith's podcasts, and the Devils actually sent him a personalized one, and he opened it on the show. In person, it looks slightly better, but it's still a jersey, and I can't sit right with it. It looks awful. Why they didn't have some sort of legacy? Do you remember the old white jersey with the green N on it, the like devil horns N? That to me shouts more history of the New Jersey Devils than what a jersey does. And I get why they've done it. I totally get that they're the only team who could put out a jersey. But even still, it's not brilliant.
Yeah, I seen it. It was the thing that I sent to you guys in our WhatsApp group was the someone had put up a meme of it. And they put it up. It was like jersey, and then someone had put up like socks and whatever else, like socks, shoes, because it looks like someone just naming the piece of clothing. It does look like someone who just went, "This is a jersey," and it really does look like that. It really does. I'll see if I can find it. It's really good. But I sent you guys a link there actually, because today the Penguins also released their 3rd jersey, which is also their retro throwback jersey. It's in our chat feature in this new program, so if you want to look for that. But it is the Penguins. They have put out a 3rd jersey as part of their like heritage retro look or whatever it is. And it's exactly the same. It's they've took the jersey and
that's no different.
It just says Pittsburgh down it. It's no again. Yeah, you're right.
I've seen Pittsburgh have a jersey like that already. I'm nearly convinced Mark has one of those.
It looks familiar. It does look familiar, but then it looks familiar because I think it looks like the Jersey one. Speaking about jerseys and speaking about jerseys that look like other jerseys. Now, I don't know, Dave, you pointed this out, and I don't know if this is just I don't think this is going to be a jersey. Maybe the teams are going to be playing in here in the Elite League. But you noted the fact that obviously the Belfast Giants at the end of last week, put out or on their store anyway, on the Belfast Giants store, you could purchase a ugly sweater jersey, a Belfast Giants ugly sweater jersey, a Christmas themed jersey, shall we say, with the Giants logo obviously in the middle, and then it's got like obviously a print of what you would imagine for a Christmas jumper kind of thing. But you point out that also then Nottingham Panthers put up a jersey similar, and when I say similar, I mean exactly the same, only with a changed logo. I mean, I don't think they're going to be playing.
Hopefully not.
What
yeah,
is that?
Well, funny you guys are talking about that, and the Dundee Stars tonight have just launched their ugly sweater, and again, it looks like a carbon copy of everything that we've seen.
So yeah, maybe they're just using the same jersey across the board then this year. I don't know. But
One thing I will
yeah.
say, if we're talking about jerseys and we're talking about jerseys for good causes, the one team, and it'll kill me a little bit to give props to it, is the Nottingham Panthers. Last weekend there, the Nottingham Panthers came out with their Hockey Fights Cancer jersey, following the great example set by NHL teams for the last few years, and absolutely fantastic. And as far as jerseys design goes, it's still a Panthers jersey and don't want it anywhere near me. But fair shout to them for putting out a Hockey Fights Cancer jersey. So fair play Panthers for that one.
Yeah, fair play. Yeah, definitely fair play to them. Guys, I think that's the end of my story for that and for Knocky News.
Okay, that brings us to the end of Knocky News then. There's nothing in the penalty box for Knocky News, which is good, and that brings us on to the star segment. Now, I missed the last podcast, so I have a bone to pick with you guys. So I took a bit of heat in the last podcast because, admittedly, the last two podcasts, I up until the last minute failed to put out the tweet. Now, I want to make this point very, very clear. I wasn't on the last podcast. The poll didn't go out for the nominations that you guys gave in the last one.
Yeah, but you're the head director of all social media, so like let's say we can
Your Lord.
I just want to make the point.
What was this? What was this? Lord Commander of social media? I can't remember.
So just to make the point that even though like it might not happen till the last minute, but when I'm involved, I mean, stuff still gets done. As soon as I step away, all of our features just disappear into pure mayhem. So I'd like to just, as current and defending and still defending Door 14 Star Competition Champion, there's no winner from the last podcast. So there is no star to award. So, and if I'm perfectly honest, I've forgotten who you guys nominated already, even though I did listen in, and you guys know that I did listen in because I sent you a little video proving that I did. I said hello when you guys said hello to me. It brings us on to the nominations for this podcast's stars, and things. I've got to be fair, guys. Things are looking a bit slim on the star nominations. There's currently only one written in there, so I'm going to do the usual.
No, there's not.
I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you a second. That's true because I'm not actually looking at the live document because my iPad was having a hissy fit earlier on, so I'm going to move to the live document now. So there are two. I'm going to go with mine first, if you don't mind, guys. So my nomination for the Door 14 star this time around is Belfast Giants. If you want to call him second string netminder, Jackson Whistle. I know it's an interesting nomination given what we said at the start of the podcast, what I said at the start of the podcast about the weekend just past. See, if I'm perfectly honest, Jackson Whistle was outstanding. I'm the first one to admit that I've been critical of Jackson, even in his first stint with the Giants as Murph's backup. I've been critical again of him since he came here. That game against Dundee, that first period in particular, he pulled off two absolutely stunning saves. And it could easily, now he pulled off a whole pile of other ones as well, it could easily have been 3 or 4-0 to Dundee at the end of the first period, or 3 or 4-1. I think the Giants scored one in the first period too. He was absolutely fantastic, and for that reason and that reason alone, that one game alone, he's going to get my star nomination. Marty, I'll come to you for yours now.
Can I actually go last? Can you go to Dave next?
Oh yeah, okay. Dave, you've gone wild.
Of course I have. They've got something to talk about for a change. So I've gone with Ryan Hartman. As I mentioned earlier, is showing some true leadership. And
it's a familiar name.
And is as the Athletic put it, he is looking like an all-star competitor. Early days still, but I think that he might be in for a shout going forward this year, and hopefully we see him do fantastically and end up as an all-star, and hopefully also get into the Olympics.
Yep, It's definitely a good shout. Hartman was great when he was with the Preds as well. I've got to be honest, he was one of the names that I hated seeing moving away and heading over to the Wild. So, yep, totally understand that. Marty, for reasons unknown, you want to go last. So here's your chance now.
Yep, I'm going last because mine is also a tiny little bit of a news feature that would technically fall into our overtime segment. So I'm going to put it in here anyway, just as our star segment instead. There's a little bit of a story to this one. So my nomination for this week is an unknown name. Nobody's going to know him. You probably have never even heard of the team, but it's for a player called Nelson Rigo, who was a last minute player brought in as a goaltender for a recreational league ice hockey team in Edmonton called the Edmonton Seahawks. Now, the reason why I've chosen Nelson Rigo is because it's a very unique story. If you haven't seen the story, I'm going to share the link with you, and we'll share the link as usual on our website. But Nelson is registered severely sight impaired, or in other terms, blind. And Nelson is what's classified as in Canada as 100% blind. He plays normally as part of I suppose a league of sight impairment league. He plays ice hockey for sight impairment league within Canada. But when this recce team I suppose found themselves without a goalie, they put out a plea online to see if anybody could come and play. And Rigo stepped up and put himself forward to see if he could come in and play. What I find really funny is they didn't tell the referee until the puck dropped that their goaltender was actually blind. Because really, what could you do? But I suppose what was interesting about this story is the fact that he did have to rely on sound as his key means of making sure he knew where the puck was, and also then he also had his wife in the stands shouting out audio instructions as well to let him know what's happening with the game. It wasn't a washout. Rigo's team lost 9-8, but he hung in there. Massive respect and admiration completely for this guy, and that's the reason why he is my star of this week.
That's
Awesome.
sorry. I'm going to be honest. I was actually reading the news piece about him, and it's absolutely nuts. My favorite part of it is that he made a glove save during the game, but his comment was, "I don't know how that got in there, but I made some decent saves."
Yeah,
I'm sure that's a
yeah.
comment
I
that
mean,
almost every goalie in every league ever has also said.
as I did mention before, this was I suppose this was a dream of his was to play. I suppose a childhood dream of his was to play for a sighted team, as it's referred to. As I said, he does play for the International Blind Ice Hockey Federation in Canada, and yeah, fair play to him. And yep, that's mine.
Yep, great shout. Okay, so at that then, there's no fan nomination this time around, so there's just the 3. So just to recap very quickly, my nomination is the Belfast Giants' Jackson Whistle. Dave's is the Minnesota Wild's Ryan Hartman, and Marty's is Edmonton Seahawks' Nelson Rigo. And there we go. That's the star nominations. I do have a diary reminder set for Thursday next week to put out the star competition, because Twitter only lets you let the poll run for 7 days. So we'll throw it out next Thursday for everyone. It gives you time to have a listen to the podcast, have a look at the links that we're going to put online for each of them, and make your decision. Marty, that takes us on through then. That's the end of the stars.
Thanks, John. Yep, our overtime segment is usually just any other stories or any other bits and pieces that have been sent in by any of our listeners, or any other stories that didn't fit in anywhere else. But we didn't really have much, or we didn't have anything before recording. What we do, and staying in keeping with the same vein of what happened in our last podcast, we have a question in from a very familiar name. And I'm sure you'll know this name. I can't remember his Twitter handle. I think it's at Iron Brew. We'll say at Iron Brew anyway, because I think that is at Iron Brew. Sounds familiar. Hi, big fan. Thanks, Iron Brew. If you could go back and re-experience any game for the first time, what game would it be and why? I think that's a really good question. Dave, let's go with you first. One game, if you could re-experience for the first time, what would it be?
Only picking one's difficult. Like, can I do a runner-up and the one I would want to relive?
Sure. Yeah.
So my runner-up would be the Giants winning the playoffs when we were there. It was unreal. Fantastic evening. But the one I would want to relive is the Challenge Cup win in the Dundonald Ice Bowl. It was like, I don't know, there was 2,000 people squeezed into that building, and when the final whistle went and the screams that came out, you thought the roof was going to explode. I don't think I've been at a game with an atmosphere like that before or since. It was like nothing I had ever experienced. There was like, it was to the point where there was people almost falling over the barriers and everything. It was just very old school hockey. And it was I was very proud that I was able to be there for that, and even able to get a ticket, because I know there's an awful lot of fans couldn't get tickets, and it was probably a defining moment as a fan, and I'm sure some of those guys, when they won, it was probably a defining moment of their careers. That was with Thorts, with his first stint as coach, I believe, and I'm sure that's got a big reason why he's still knocking about.
Yep, that's a good choice. I think that's definitely, I think that's a perfect choice. It's probably one of the ones I would have in my head too. But I'll go with mine last. John, let's go with you next. One game and why?
I'm going to do the same as Dave. I'm going to give you two. I'm going to go with an honourable mention, and the one that I would actually go with. My honourable mention would have to be my first NHL game, and that was in Montreal. And I wouldn't change what rink or arena. I know I'm a Preds fan, and it wasn't a Preds game, but going into that old school, like I call it old school, it's city centre arena with so much history. Like that was, and just because it was my first NHL game, it was absolutely amazing. And if I could relive that again, I absolutely would. But probably my go-to game to relive again, and if you gave me the option, I'd maybe try and do it sober, is the year that I think it was the first year that I was going to the Giants and we won the league. And it was, I think, the last year that Monty was awarded to us. Before, was it Sheffield still have Monty when they got it, or is it Nottingham?
Mm-hmm.
But that last year, and that was, I think, the first season of McCool's, and there's still photos of the three of us at least all being handed Monty by Jeff Swez and taking swallows of what I think was beer. But by the time it had gone through as many fans as it had, you certainly couldn't be doing that in COVID days. I'd maybe, and the game itself, because we won it that night. At
Mm-hmm.
that game, as far as I remember, we won it, and we won the trophy that night. It was awarded on the ice that night, or was it awarded maybe a couple of nights the next game, maybe? Um, Whatever it was, I was that drunk, but it would be nice to remember it, like actually in full. But I don't know, maybe take water out of Monty just to enjoy it instead. But yeah, I would go back and I would relive that moment.
Yep.
Still
That's
had long hair and everything in those pictures. It was weird.
You do,
Yep.
yeah, I know. I'm going to then stick with. I'm going to do the same as you guys, and I'm going to do a notable runner up, and then my chosen game that I would go back to. My notable, and again, my notable one is also a bit soppy and sentimental, so I apologize for this, but I'd say same vein as you, John. It would be my first NHL game experience. Not just because of the game itself, I suppose the whole experience around the game. It was just a whole different world when you get to go to that first NHL game for the first time, but also getting to go to that first NHL game with you guys was a massive thing, and it was just such a it was such like, again, not to sound soppy and sentimental, but like it felt like a special game to be at, and to experience that for the first time with you with you three, definitely will stand out for me, and I would go back to that in a heartbeat. I would go back to that. My choice when it comes to an actual game for, I guess, for how I felt during the game, how I felt as the game was progressing, right to the point where the game finished, would be, it's already mentioned it, the playoff championship in 2010 when the Belfast Giants won the championship in Nottingham. It was the weekend itself was a great weekend as an experience, but the game, and I suppose my what my body went through, I suppose, through that whole game was just like, I mean, I think at one point I had to sit down towards the end of the game because I just, my legs went to jelly, and I was just like, when we're heading towards those penalties, I was just, I couldn't. You know what I'm like when it comes to penalties, hiding under my jersey, and it was just, the whole experience was just out of this world. Sometimes I think, do I want to go back and experience that lightheaded feeling and that dizziness that I was having when I had to sit down? But I wouldn't. I would totally go back. That was a fantastic game, and I would go back to that moment at any time.
Can I throw out one that we can probably all agree that we would go back and watch again? The Conti Cup in Belfast, the Conti Cup final, the last game against Augsburger, and we were again went to penalties. We were that close. Never known the SFC to be as loud. Never.
No, yeah, it was phenomenal.
Fantastic.
That was an experience.
Yeah, no, that was a good one. Well, Aaron, we hope that answered your question for you, or Aaron Brew, sorry, not Aaron Brew. Yeah. Give it away. Hopefully that answered the question for you. If you guys, anybody else out there has a question you want to put to us to answer, please do so. You can get in touch with us in all the usual ways on all the social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Door14Hockey. Check out check out any of our other podcasts, content and stuff that's in our podcasts on our website, door14hockey.com. You're obviously listening to this podcast on one platform, whatever that platform of choice may be, but we're on all platforms now, smart speakers and everything else. I don't think there's any platform that we're not on. So check us out. If you are listening to us on iTunes, leave us a review, 5 stars preferably. Let us know your thoughts on the podcast, or anything that helps. Supposedly it pleases the algorithm, I suppose, and gets us noted a bit more and people listening a bit more, get us seen a bit better. So please do so. I don't think we have anything else for this week.
Nope.
So with that, then we'll just sign off for this week. I'm Marty.
And Dave.
I'm John.
Have a great week.
Da, da, da.